Okay, so life sentences. Are they just, I don't know, warehousing people,
Yeah.
letting them expire?
Right. Just locked away.
Well, could we reframe that? Think about it differently. Maybe something like decades of forced labor instead.
It's a stark reframing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is hard labor, well, harsher? Or does it give some kind of, I don't know, twisted purpose compared
Okay.
to just waiting to die in a cell?
Yeah, it really makes you question what society thinks is a just punishment. Is it just ending a threat? Or is it about actively making someone pay through, sheer physical toil?
That word pay, what does that truly mean in this context?
Well, picture the absolute worst offender you can possibly imagine, the kind of crime that makes your stomach turn.
Okay.
Now, instead of a cell, picture them breaking rocks day after day for years, decades maybe, body
Yeah.
aching, spirit just gone. Does that image, that suffering, does it satisfy something in you? Some sense of justice, more than just locking them up?
That's that's the uncomfortable core of it, isn't it? That
Mm-hmm.
immediate gut reaction.
Yeah.
It taps into something really primal, that desire for, like, visible retribution. But what does it say about us if that image feels, well, satisfying?
It's unsettling. I remember reading a victim impact statement once. The rage was just palpable, white hot. And I had this chilling thought that for that victim, maybe nothing our system currently does could ever feel like enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that disconnect between our sort of clinical ideas of justice and that raw, messy grief, it's huge.
Exactly. We want justice to be clean, maybe even sterile. But the things that drive it, grief, vengeance, they're anything but clean. Can any system actually bridge that gap without becoming, monstrous itself?
It feels like walking a tightrope, and then there's
Yeah.
this contradiction. We generally abhor slavery, right? It's
Yeah.
historical horror.
Absolutely, unequivocally wrong.
Yet, for certain criminals, the truly heinous ones, does that certainty waver? Do we start thinking maybe there's an exception just for them?
And that's the dangerous edge. Where do we draw that line? Is it based on the crime? Or is it just our own outrage letting us bend the rules we claim to hold universally?
Yeah, are our morals conditional, convenient?
It certainly forces you to ask.
Then you look at the practical side. Prisons cost billions, they're overcrowded, it's a crisis in many
A
places.
massive drain, yeah.
And someone inevitably floats the idea, what if these labor camps were, self-funding?
Ugh, that language, self-funding.
Right. It immediately turns justice into
What?
a business model where human suffering is the raw material.
It's chillingly transactional, using words like productivity in the same breath as punishment. Is this about justice anymore, or is it just exploitation wrapped in legalese?
Okay, let's play devil's advocate. What if these camps, through sheer terror, did reduce crime rates?
A terrifying thought experiment.
But what if the price for that statistical safety is extinguishing the humanity of the prisoners? And maybe, just maybe, chipping away at our own humanity for allowing it.
That's the Faustian bargain, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
Trading a piece of society's soul for feeling safer. What's the real cost, long term? Is that a price we're actually willing to pay?
I read a detail once about a proposed design for one of these high-security labor camps, and one phrase just leaped out. It said the environment was not meant to be survivable in spirit.
Not survivable in spirit.
Wow. What does that even mean? What kind of society deliberately sets out to crush the human spirit as a form of punishment?
To engineer spiritual annihilation, that suggests a fundamental shift. It's not about correction or even just containment anymore. It's about deliberate destruction. What does that reflect back on the society doing the crushing?
So let's ask the listener, ask ourselves really, be honest. If you lean towards supporting this idea, is it really about atonement through hard work? A belief they're contributing? Or is this something darker, that visceral satisfaction in imagining their prolonged suffering, that image of them breaking rocks?
Yeah, getting honest about our own motivations here is
Yeah.
crucial. Is it genuine justice we're after? Or is it just like a mental movie of punishment that gives us some kind of perverse closure, like Socrates said, know thyself? This feels like one of those moments.
We all know the saying, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind.
Mm-hmm. A classic.
But are there crimes so awful, so devastating, that an eye just doesn't feel like enough, that demand more? Maybe a lifetime of hard labor right up until death. How do we square that gut feeling with the ideal of proportional justice?
It's a huge tension. Abstract principles versus raw lived pain. You hear talk of forgiveness, but for someone whose life has been utterly destroyed, That can sound hollow. It shows the gap between theory and experience.
And history isn't exactly encouraging here. We look back at things like the gulags, the Laogai,
Atrocities, plain and simple.
condemn them. So what makes us think our version, if we were to try it, would be different? Better intentions, nicer guards? Is that really it?
It's that illusion, isn't it? That we're different now, we wouldn't make those mistakes. But history consistently shows the dangers of unchecked power, the way forced servitude inevitably dehumanizes, regardless of the initial justification.
Okay, stop and think about this seriously. If we go down this road, who decides? Who draws the line for which life sentences qualify? Murder, mass murder, terrorism, financial ruin on a mass scale.
And what happens when they get it wrong? Because systems make mistakes, people get wrongly convicted.
Exactly. And a life shattered by decades of forced labor. You can't undo that. It's irreversible in a way even imprisonment isn't, especially if someone is later exonerated.
The stakes are exponentially higher. The potential for error becomes catastrophic.
You listening right now, you probably believe in human rights. For yourself, for your family, for most people.
Fundamental rights, yeah.
But does that conviction flicker, even for a second, when you think about forced labor for the perpetrator of a truly monstrous crime?
It forces that uncomfortable question. Are rights truly universal? Or are they conditional? And who gets to decide when they're stripped away? Us.
Here's a grim choice. Your tax dollars. Would you rather they pay for someone to sit idle in a prison cell, or pay for them to be visibly working, building roads, mining, whatever, visibly suffering to earn their keep? Which feels more right?
It pulls on that utilitarian thread, doesn't it? The greatest good or least harm for the greatest number. But it risks reducing people to economic units, completely sidestepping the ethical core of dignity.
And you hear it all the time, that resentment. Criminals in prison live better than some honest folks out here.
Yeah, that's a common refrain.
But is the answer really to drag the prisoners down further? Or should we be focused on lifting up the people struggling on the outside? What's really driving that comparison?
It often comes from a place of real frustration about inequality, which is understandable. But the impulse is punitive, isn't it? Not constructive. It's about lowering one group, not raising another.
Okay, quick fire. Forced labor. All life sentences. Just mass murderers. Terrorists. What about corrupt politicians whose actions caused immense harm? Where do you draw the line, and what principle are you using?
It shows how slippery that slope is, right?
Yeah.
Once you start, the categories can so easily expand, driven by emotion, by public anger, not by consistent ethics.
Look, I believe in consequences, serious ones for serious acts. But the image of the state, deliberately orchestrating a slow, grinding destruction of a person through labor, it makes me wonder if we become the monster in that scenario.
It's a huge ethical knot. Can you really fight barbarism with more barbarism, even if it's state-sanctioned? Nietzsche's warning about fighting monsters, becoming one yourself. It hangs heavy here.
I heard something from a retired prison guard once. He said lifers who had some kind of job, even if it was just mopping floors, they seemed to cope better. They lasted longer than those with absolutely nothing.
Interesting observation. Purpose, maybe? Even imposed purpose?
Maybe. But what happens when it's forced labor? No choice, purely punitive, maybe deliberately degrading. Does that destroy the very dynamic the guard observed? Does it become just another tool of breaking someone?
It flicks the script entirely. Work can give structure, even dignity sometimes. But forced labor, especially designed to punish, that could be purely destructive. A tool of degradation, like you said.
And here's maybe an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes life sentences are about society wanting to forget, lock them up, throw away the key, let them fade from view.
Out of sight, out of mind.
But forced labor, that makes the punishment hypovisible, constant. Do we actually want to see that? Like to have their suffering on display daily through their work?
It shatters that illusion of a clean resolution. It forces a confrontation with the ongoing reality of punishment, which many people might prefer to avoid. We like our justice served then. Forgotten.
It's funny, isn't it? We binge true crime fascinated by the darkness.
Can't get enough.
But then we often want the actual justice system to be sanitized, clean, almost abstract. Forced labor is the opposite of that. It's the gritty, ugly reality we sometimes claim we want.
Yeah, there's a definite disconnect. Drawn to the gore, but maybe repulsed by the long, slow grind of actual punishment made visible. Would the entertainment value last if the show is just a broken old man still breaking rocks after 40 years?
Let's get really personal. If someone you loved was taken from you, brutally, murdered, Wouldn't some part of you deep down whisper that no suffering is enough for the person who did it?
Oh, God, yeah.
In that moment of pure agony and rage, could you honestly argue for humane treatment? For limits on suffering in a labor camp?
It's the ultimate test of principle versus instinct, isn't it?
Mm.
Abstract ideals they can evaporate in the face of that kind of personal trauma. The desire for retribution can be overwhelming.
Nietzsche talked about gazing into the abyss.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Be careful it doesn't gaze back.
Right. So what happens to a society that doesn't just gaze, but actively builds an abyss? Staffs it with broken people, calls it justice through forced labor. Does that abyss inevitably stare back and change the builders? Change us?
There's a real danger there,
Mm.
that the very act of creating and maintaining such a system, of institutionalizing that level of cruelty, it coarsens us. It erodes empathy collectively. We become changed by the system we create.
Okay, flip it around. Imagine the worst possible scenario. A miscarriage of justice. And it's you, wrongly convicted. Life sentence.
Terrifying.
Would you rather be in a prison cell, maybe forgotten but relatively anonymous, or publicly degraded, physically destroyed day after day in a forced labor camp? Suddenly, that abstract what if becomes intensely personal, doesn't it?
It forces you to weigh the risks differently. The possibility of error, however small, feels completely different when you imagine yourself as the victim of that error in that system. The potential for irreversible devastation is just immense.
We all want to feel safe. That's a natural human desire.
Of course.
But we need to distinguish between wanting security and becoming okay with state-sanctioned brutality, even if it's aimed at the worst of the worst. Where does our legitimate fear end and our complicity in something monstrous begin?
Our desire for safety can't be the justification for abandoning our core values. There's just no clean, moral way to implement a system built on deliberately inflicting suffering. Real security has to include preserving our own humanity, too.
Think about history's darkest examples. Forced labor wasn't always just about work. Often it was extermination disguised as productivity.
Tool of genocide, yeah.
Are we absolutely sure our motives, starting out maybe as justice, would stay pure? That the power wouldn't corrupt? That the productivity wouldn't become the main goal, obscuring the human cost?
History teaches us that power, especially absolute power over others' lives and suffering, is incredibly corrupting. Believing we're different, that we're immune, that's a dangerous naivete. The patterns are disturbingly consistent.
Here's maybe the most disturbing thought for me. Maybe the real horror isn't just what it does to the prisoners. Maybe it's what the existence of these camps says about us.
What it reveals.
Yeah. Our hidden capacity for cruelty, maybe even sadism, our thirst for visible vengeance, our willingness to dehumanize people so completely that we become the thing we claim to hate. Is that the reflection we want to see in the mirror?
It forces a confrontation with the shadow side, as Jung might say. The ease with which that us versus them mentality can lead to justifying the unthinkable. It's a profoundly uncomfortable mirror to hold up.
And maybe this whole desire for justice through forced labor, maybe it's not even really about justice. Maybe it's simpler. Maybe it's just easier.
Easier than what?
Easier than doing the hard, complex work of tackling the root causes of crime. Poverty, mental illness, systemic inequality. It's easier to just have monsters, punish them brutally, and feel like we've done something, right? A simple narrative instead of messy reality.
It's the allure of the simple solution. Enacting harsh punishment can feel decisive, satisfying even, without requiring us to grapple with those much harder systemic issues that fuel crime in the first place. A shortcut? Maybe.
So you might still be thinking this is about them, the criminals. But I really want to push this. It's about us. It's about the moral lines we are willing to cross. What statement does that make about the kind of society we're choosing to be?
Every policy choice reflects collective values. Forced labor camps aren't just a policy, they're a statement. A potentially damning statement about prioritizing retribution, maybe even vengeance, over rehabilitation, or even basic human dignity.
And this really resonates with me. The moment you start treating human beings purely as a means to an end, any end, even an end you call justice, you've lost something fundamental about your own humanity. Is any crime, however terrible, worth sacrificing that principle?
It's Kant's categorical imperative, basically. Treat people always as ends in themselves, never merely as means.
Yeah.
Is any crime so awful that it justifies throwing that fundamental ethical principle out the window?
Go back to that first image, the worst offender you know, breaking rocks under the sun. If seeing that gives you even a tiny flicker of satisfaction, You need to ask yourself honestly, what part of you is being fed by that? What shadow part is finding nourishment there?
It's that confrontation with our own darker impulses again. The desire for retribution is real, it's human. But the question is, do we build our justice system around indulging it or around striving for something higher, more humane?
If this whole deep dive has made you uncomfortable, good. That's the point. Share that discomfort. Talk to someone who believes strongly in pure retribution. Ask them to really think through the cost to our shared humanity of creating that kind of world.
These aren't easy questions. They shouldn't be. Ethical reflection means grappling with the hard stuff, the uncomfortable possibilities. That discomfort is where growth happens.
We started asking about the purpose of prison, punishment, rehabilitation, just removal. Forced labor makes suffering an active project of the state, not just a passive consequence.
Exactly. It's a shift from removal to active, continuous infliction of hardship. It redefines the state's role in a really profound and, I think, disturbing way.
So which is crueler? Letting a mind rot in isolation, or systematically breaking a body with pointless, grueling labor day after day? Which void is worse? And who gets to make that choice for someone
Ugh.
else?
It's a horrifying comparison, isn't it? Two terrible options. The real question isn't which is better, but whether either path aligns with the values of a society that claims to be just and humane.
We like efficiency, don't we? Clean solutions, like technology. Forced labor might tick some boxes for efficiency, but the brutality, for some, that is the point, the visible performance of punishment.
That desire for a neat, efficient fix for crime is a dangerous trap. It looks good on paper, maybe, but it ignores the massive moral and ethical costs that you can't put on a spreadsheet.
Try to imagine the sounds, not just pickaxes, the coughing, the silence of utter despair, the, I don't know, bored indifference of the guards who see it every day. Could you live near that, knowing your society created it?
That brings the human reality crashing in, doesn't it? It challenges our ability to stay detached. What's the psychological toll on everyone involved, including us, the society that sanctions it?
Okay, quick mental exercise. List the crimes you think deserve this. Got it. Now, imagine it's your own child who committed one. Does the list change? Does your certainty waver?
That hits on, doesn't it? It exposes how abstract principles can crumble when faced with personal connection. Empathy kicks in. Our convictions might not be as absolute as we thought.
You might think supporting this is being tough on crime.
That's the usual justification.
But step back. Are you being tough? Or are you just mirroring the very brutality you condemn? Is this really about reducing crime? Or is it about enacting a powerful, satisfying cruelty?
It's the danger of becoming the monster again. If our pursuit of justice leads us to embrace cruelty, we undermine the whole moral basis we're supposedly defending. Do the ends justify those means? Really?
There's this idea, maybe from Camus, that cruelty is like a disease. And the state especially should never engage in it because it infects everything. If the state is deliberately cruel for justice, what does that make justice? What does it make us?
It poisons the well. When the state, the supposed guardian of rights, becomes the purveyor of cruelty, it normalizes it. It sends ripples through society, potentially eroding standards everywhere.
And the cost isn't just money, it's moral erosion, international condemnation, the precedent it sets for treating anyone deemed despised. What's the full bill we'd be paying?
You have to look at the wide-angle view. It impacts our values, our global standing, our very understanding of what a just civilization looks like. It's not an isolated policy.
You might think, oh, I'd protest that. I'd never stand for it.
We all like to think that.
But history shows most people just adapt. They rationalize. They look away. Which role would you really play? Be honest.
It's a sobering look at human nature, isn't it? Our capacity for denial, for going along with things. We have to really question if we'd have the courage to stand against the tide if this became reality.
And remember, you don't need to be some kind of sadist to support this.
Right.
All it takes is being convinced it's necessary, that they deserve it.
Yeah.
That's how these things always start, isn't it? With justifications, with the quiet acceptance that it's okay to dehumanize this group just this once.
Exactly. The normalization often happens step by step, with reasons that sound plausible at first. Necessity, deservedness. It's a well-worn path, and it leads to dark places.
And who decides where labor ends and torture begins when you've got armed guards and powerless prisoners? The language will be clean, official.
Yeah.
But the reality on the ground, shaped by power and desperation.
The power imbalance is just immense. It creates a huge risk of abuse. That line can become incredibly blurry, tragically blurry, when one side holds all the cards.
I have to say, I used to have much firmer ideas about justice, absolute certainty.
Many people do.
But learning about wrongful convictions, about how fallible our systems are, it's instilled a kind of humility. The thought of just one innocent person in a forced labor camp. It should stop anyone cold. A long, hard pause.
The knowledge of fallibility carries immense weight. Given the irreversible nature of this kind of punishment, the possibility of error becomes an unbearable moral burden for society.
Dostoevsky famously said, you can judge a society's civilization by its
A
prisons.
powerful measure.
What would forced labor camps, these places designed for hardship, say about our civilization? How would history judge us?
It's a stark reflection, isn't it? It would suggest a move away from rehabilitation, away from complex understandings of justice, towards something far more punitive and perhaps less civilized.
We lock people away partly so we don't have to look, right, out of sight. Forced labor makes suffering public almost a spectacle. Are you sure you want front row seats to that, day in, day out? What would the Wilmans, with their arenas, think of us?
Making suffering entertainment, or even just a public display, it risks desensitizing us. It could foster a kind of societal callousness. The long-term psychological effects on everyone are deeply concerning. Eroding empathy isn't a path toward a better society.
Have you ever felt it? That burning, gut-level desire for someone who caused immense harm to really suffer. That primal need for payback.
It's a powerful human emotion. Understandable, even.
Forced labor camps.
No.
That's basically that emotion-made policy. Institutionalized vengeance. But should we build our justice system on our rawest, ugliest emotions?
Yeah.
Or on higher ideals? Reason? Mercy, even?
It's the fundamental choice. Are we guided by our base instincts or by our aspirations? Should justice be about vengeance or about fairness, dignity, and maybe even the possibility of redemption, however remote?
Let's just be clear. There's no humane way to do forced labor for life. It's a contradiction. It's about breaking spirits, not mending them.
The brutality is inherent. You can't regulate it away or dress it up in nice language. It is designed to inflict suffering and dehumanize. That's its nature.
Is that person in the camp just a criminal? Or are they also a symbol of where we failed? Failed in prevention, in rehabilitation, failed in imagining justice beyond just retribution. How much responsibility do we share?
It pushes us to see the bigger picture. Focusing only on the individual act ignores the context, the societal factors. Are we just punishing the symptom without addressing the disease? It's an incomplete approach at best.
And if you support this, think about mission creep. What happens when the definition of deserving crimes starts to widen? When political dissent gets labeled as betrayal, could your beliefs land you there one day? How secure are those definitions really?
The expansion of state power is always a risk, especially power this severe. Definitions can shift. What's considered acceptable dissent today might be deemed criminal tomorrow. It's a dangerous precedent to set.
You can't pretty this up. Supporting state-sanctioned forced labor for life. It means acknowledging a dark impulse, a desire for control, for retribution that maybe we don't like admitting to. What does owning that desire say about us?
It requires real honesty, doesn't it? To look past the justifications and confront the raw motivation. Is it justice? Or something less noble? The answer might be uncomfortable.
What if these camps became profitable? Huge profits for the state or private companies. Would that make it okay? Or just more grotesque, turning human misery into a commodity on a balance sheet?
Profit motive entering the equation raises massive ethical red flags. It creates perverse incentives. Instead of aiming to reduce the need for punishment, the system might seek to perpetuate it for financial gain. It utterly corrupts the idea of justice.
Your silence, if this idea were seriously proposed, it wouldn't be neutral. It would be a quiet yes, an echo into that abyss we talked about. What does silence signify in the face of potential state cruelty?
Inaction can be complicity. There are times when silence is not golden, it's an endorsement. History remembers not just the actors, but also those who stood by and did nothing.
Imagine your grandkids asking you, years from now, what did you believe about justice? How should we treat people who do terrible things? What will you tell them about forced labor? Will you be proud of your answer? Of the world your beliefs helped shape?
We are accountable to the future. The legacy we leave is built on the choices we make now. What story will our stance on issues like this tell about our generation's values?
Maybe. Maybe the most civilized society isn't the one that's best at punishing. Maybe it's the one that holds on to its own humanity most fiercely, even when dealing with those who seem to have lost theirs. Maybe true strength isn't in crushing, but in retaining compassion.
It's a powerful thought. That refusing to mirror the brutality we condemn is the ultimate sign of strength of civilization, choosing humanity over vengeance, even when it's hardest.
I'll admit it, I feel that rage sometimes, that urge for retribution, it's real. But I also see the danger in building our world on that feeling. It creates a prison for everyone, fueled by vengeance. Can we afford that?
Acknowledging the anger is step one, transcending it to build systems based on reason, fairness, and dignity. That's the challenge for a just society. We can't let our darkest impulses design our institutions.
Because ultimately, this isn't something we can outsource. We're all responsible for the justice system we have. Morality isn't just for politicians or judges. It starts with us, with what we accept, what we demand.
Absolutely. Our collective values shape the system. We each have a role in questioning, debating, and striving for a justice that reflects our highest ideals, not our lowest instincts. A justice that upholds humanity.
So, is forced labor harsher punishment or twisted purpose? I think the answer reflects what we choose to value more. It's about who we decide to be when faced with the worst of human behavior.
Our answer defines us. It reveals whether we prioritize retribution above all else, or if we hold on to ideals of dignity, fairness, and the possibility, however faint, of something beyond mere punishment. It goes to the core of our societal identity.
You don't show strength by adopting the cruelty you hate. You show it by rising above, by choosing transformation maybe over just crushing. Real strength is in holding on to empathy, even for the unforgivable.
True justice requires more than just inflicting pain. It demands we uphold our principles even when it's difficult, even when our instincts scream for vengeance. It demands a commitment to humanity itself.
If anything we talked about made you flinch, made you uncomfortable, listen to that. That's your conscience speaking. Don't brush it aside.
That discomfort is valuable. It signals that something important is being touched. Engaging with these tough questions, even when they're unsettling, is how we grow, individually and as a society.
If this deep dive challenged you, share it. Let's complicate the easy answers about crime and punishment. The stakes our shared humanity are just too high for simplistic solutions.
These conversations are vital. By grappling with the complexities, questioning easy assumptions, and listening to different viewpoints, we move closer to a truly just and humane world. Silence isn't the answer.
This has been the deep dive. We don't offer easy answers, but hopefully we've left you with some hard questions. What kind of world do you want? And what price are you willing to pay or make others pay to get it? The answer, really, is up to you.
The choices we make about justice echo far beyond prison walls. They define the character of our society. The deep dive continues within each of us as we wrestle with these fundamental questions of right, wrong, and what it means to be human.